Here is the latest Higher Summits forecast brought to you by our friends at the Mount Washington Observatory.
Weather above treeline in the White Mountains is often wildly different than at our trailheads. Before you hike, check the Higher Summits forecast at mountwashington.org. Weather observers working at the nonprofit Mount Washington Observatory write this elevation-based forecast every morning and afternoon. Search and rescue teams, avalanche experts, and backcountry guides all rely on the Higher Summits forecast to anticipate weather conditions above treeline. You should too. Go to mountwashington.org or text forecast to 603-356-2137.
Hello, listeners. Here's your forecast for the weekend of January 31st, 2026. Friday. Mostly in the clouds, trending towards in and out of the clouds under decreasingly cloudy skies. A slight chance of snow showers early. Possible snow accumulations of a trace to 1 inch. High around 5 below. Wind northwest at 45 to 60 miles per hour with gusts up to 70 miles per hour early, 25 to 40 miles per hour midday, and 30 to 45 miles per hour later. Wind chill rising to 30 below to 40 below. Friday night, in and out of the clouds, trending towards clearing under partly cloudy skies. Low around 5 below early, and then rising to around 0 by sunrise. Wind northwest at 30 to 45 miles per hour, decreasing to 25 to 40 miles per hour. Wind chill 30 below to 40 below, then rising to 25 below to 35 below. And Saturday, mostly in the clear under partly sunny skies. High around 5 above. Wind northwest shifting north at 20 to 35 miles per hour. Wind chill rising to 15 below to 25 below. So a rather frigid start to this weekend. Looks like it's going to moderate a little bit by Saturday. Keep in mind there is a wind chill warning in effect through 10 a.m. on Friday, and a wind chill advisory in effect from 10 a.m. on Friday until 7 a.m. on Saturday. So looking frigid, but supposed to moderate a little bit. And happy hiking, go crush some peaks, and be safe out there, folks.
Broadcasting from the Woodpecker Studio in the great Live Free or Die state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire and beyond. Here are your hosts, Mike and Nick.
All right, Nick, episode 221 here. We're getting up here with numbers.
We are.
221 was actually, that was the time that the bell rang when I was in middle school. That was what time we got out, 221.
221? That's very specific.
221, yeah. That's what time the bell rang.
I think we were 2:30. I feel like. I do remember homeroom being like at 7:37 or something odd like that. Like you had to be in homeroom by...
Yeah, 221 was when the bell rang and you could go outside, and then usually we'd run outside and smoke cigarettes behind the school and be little rebels. So,
Gen X.
So, but I'm shopping around on things to do in Jacksonville, Florida, Nick.
Oh, because you're headed down for Daytona, right?
Daytona 500. I'm going to.
Excellent. That's like literally one of the biggest sporting events like in the world, right? As far as attendance
supposedly,
and watching.
Yeah, I've never gone. I've never gone to a big race, so I'm excited.
Okay, cool.
But I won't be hiking that weekend, unfortunately. Yeah. So it should be good. But all right, you ready to get going?
I am ready. I'm ready to roll.
All right. So welcome to episode 221 of the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast. This week, we are joined by Jo Giese. Jo is an award-winning journalist, a lifelong hiker, and the author of the upcoming memoir, You'll Never Walk Alone, which is coming out on February 10th. So after a devastating accident left her unable to walk, Jo refused to give up on her love for wild trails and hiking. So her journey back was, it's a remarkable tale. She took one tiny step at a time. So we're excited to hear from Jo about her journey back from a tough Achilles injury and getting back to hiking. Alex Honnold climbed Taipei 101. We've got snow and Arctic weather hits New Hampshire, and then we've got a new tax on bicycles. So we'll discuss again the fascinating fun fact about how Nick never learned to ride a bike and what this means for his children. We're all nervous for
I didn't think about that when I put that in the script, which is unfair because I think that was set up in another trip. But anyways.
Yeah. That's the first thing I thought of. So, plus we got 2 skiers rescued off of Mount Moosilauke. We've got a snow leopard attacking a skier. Not around here in China. Yeah. A hiker in the Catskills is warned by a ranger. He tells the ranger that they're all set, not to worry, and then later needs a rescue. All this plus a little White Mountains history. So I'm Mike.
And I'm Nick.
Let's get started.
Let's get started!
So let's move into a little advertisement here from our friend Christina from Wild Raven Endurance Coaching, and then we'll come out the other side.
All right.
Hi, I'm Christina from Wild Raven Endurance Coaching. I work with athletes of all levels, from hikers to triathletes, helping you reach your goals with personalized guidance. With years of experience hiking, mountain biking, and trail running across New England, I also have a deep knowledge of the New Hampshire 4,000 footers and the surrounding trails. Whether you're a beginner hiker or a seasoned athlete, I'll guide you towards your goals, reducing injury risk and improving your performance through smart, tailored coaching. Are you looking to transition from hiking to mountain running? I'm here to make that journey easier too. My approach combines strength training, mindfulness, and life balance on and off the trail. Let me help you find more joy in your sport while getting stronger and healthier along the way. Visit www.coaching.christinafolsick.com and start your adventure today.
Boop. All right, so we are back here, Nick. So first thing first is my palms have been sweating nonstop since I watched this Netflix special on Alex Honnold, free soloing Taipei 101. So why don't you tell the listeners who this guy is and a little bit of background on him, and then we'll talk about this climb.
Yeah, so Alex Honnold, I mean, even if you're not in the world of climbing, you probably are aware of Alex Honnold and sort of... he's probably one of the greats at this point. I got to say, he's only 40, so it seems like he'd do a lot more. I know there's a couple other climbers that are pretty world-renowned in terms of just rock climbing and ascending. And we're not talking about like climbing mountaineering. We're talking about climbing in the technical sense. And mostly, I think he's known for his free solo of Yosemite that happened back in 2017, which was a pretty big deal when it did happen. And he actually took on this wild challenge of free soloing Taipei 101, which is in Taipei, Taiwan. Amazing looking building, a really beautiful piece of architecture. And to boot, it was actually broadcasted live on Netflix. And the term live, I don't think it actually was done live. I learned this because I think when we were Stomp and Mike kind of were all texting, I think a little bit back and forth while we were watching when it was broadcasted. And I actually already saw that he did it successfully. So I'm imagining it wasn't completely live. A lot of that I'm imagining is liability. So they weren't showing him, God forbid he fell to his doom or something on TV. They'd have kind of a way to sort of skirt around that and not be broadcasting that to the masses on the special. But he did accomplish it. I fully agree with Mike where I think by the end of it, especially when he ascended to the top of the building and all the way up the spire and he was just standing up there, like I was definitely getting an involuntary, like sort of anxious, like sweaty response just watching him do that. Cause I just could not imagine standing on the top of that building. I think it was around 1,800 feet tall or something like that, which wasn't the biggest vertical ascent he had done. El Capitan's actually bigger than that. I think it's around 3,000. So for him, it wasn't the biggest free solo ascent he's done vertically, But it was insane to look at, and I don't know. Do you have any thoughts, Mike, on watching that and how it was?
Yeah, so I turned it on and off. Matter of fact, my palms are sweating just talking about it because I get freaked out about it. So I would say there's two things. One is the difference between doing a free solo on a rock wall where you've gone up and done it like a bunch of times. I mean, maybe he trained. I don't know. I didn't look into the details. Did he train with a rope multiple times on this building? I'm not sure, but to me, it's like a rock wall. You can sort of understand that, like and there's always a risk that the rocks are going to tear off. But he's pulling himself up on these like moldings and couplings on the outside of the building. Like I don't have any trust whatsoever that those things are going to hold. You know, he didn't seem to have any problem. Like there was these overhangs that he's pulling up on that have like molding over them that like, how does he know that that's not just going to rip right off?
That was a thought that also ran across my mind when he kept hitting those like dragon sections that were shooting off the side of the building. Like how bad would it be if he just grabbed one and it just ripped off or something like that? I guess it wouldn't be that funny, so I don't know why I'm laughing. But just the sheer, I guess, insanity of watching someone climb a skyscraper like that. Yeah, and I mean, they were showing some little behind the scenes videos. One thing I want to say, the announcers were pretty awful that they had, in my opinion. I think they were kind of, it was kind of
like a wrestling guy that was one of the announcers, I think. Right?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much more they could talk about just the fact that he was exposed and it was windy and other factors. It seemed like they were kind of chomping at the bit for content. I think they needed some writers to kind of throw them some other stuff to go into. But they did go into a couple little side videos where they showed him like doing chin-ups and like he has enough core strength and upper body strength that he can like launch himself vertically like into the air in like a chin-up position, which I mean, he's a climber, but I still thought it was very impressive to just show the amount of core strength and also just the control that he had to be able to sort of contract and like release his muscles at the right time and the coordination to sort of do that all while on the side of a building. Very impressive to say the least.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I would call out on this is like there's an ethical thing about this that I have a bit of a problem with. Like, it's one thing for him to be a single guy, and I know. So he blew up on this movie Free Solo, and at the time it chronicled him like meeting his then girlfriend, now wife. And, you know, he was very clear with her, like, look, this is my passion. This is my life. This is what I'm going to do. And she signed up for that. But I think that equation has to change when you have two kids. Like, he's got two young kids at this point, and I question the ethics of doing the free solo stuff when you've got two kids like that. And he was quoted around the fact saying like, oh, you know, they're really young and they wouldn't miss me. But, and again, I don't know, growing up without a father, I haven't experienced that, but I know that, like, I know people that have, and I know that the track record for that isn't as good as it is with people with a parent in the home. So he's a successful guy. He doesn't need the money. He doesn't need to put his family through this. And I get it that like it's his sort of legacy, but he does not need to do free solo stuff anymore. Like he did the special when he went to Greenland and did the other one with the Devil's Tower where he rope climbed. Like, plenty of people will watch him climb with a rope and do cool stuff without him having to do the free solo stuff.
Yeah, I totally agree with the perspective as a parent. I thought it was mind-blowing that he actually has two young daughters that are both like 4 and younger, which I thought was kind of irresponsible, I guess. In a sense, I'm sure like there's people that fall on either side of the equation. The other thing too is that I know and I guess everybody that does free solo climbing gets mixed reviews, because to me, you can prove, like, even if you're doing trad climbing, like, you can prove that you're climbing that with safety. Like, you can have a rope, he could have had fixed points, and it doesn't take away from the physical accomplishment of doing it. It just like removes the ability for him to fall like 100 stories on the ground. So I don't know if I fully understand the whole thrill. Again, I'm not a climber, certainly not a free solo climber, have no desire to do that, but I don't quite understand, especially on a building when you're doing it like that, like why you couldn't just take some sort of safety precautions. But that's just me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like he's a very famous guy at this point. He did survive it. So
yeah,
it is what it is. But like, to me, I'm not signing up for that when I got 2 little kids. But this guy's built different. There's no question about it. I think they did an analysis on his brain where like the normal fear reaction for certain things, like he just doesn't function in his brain. So he's just wired differently, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, you brought up the money aspect of it. So this was pretty interesting. And I kind of linked the article. But he basically said that he made around the mid six figures for climbing it. So this article kind of goes into compare like what, say, like NBA players and baseball players and athletes are making. And to me, how much money Netflix probably made off this. Again, I'm not familiar with production costs and things like that, but I got to think that was a very small slice of the pie that what they were looking at for producing this special and broadcasting it, quote unquote, live.
Yeah, I don't know the economics of streaming, but I was shocked that he got paid like that. I would have thought that he would have been paid in the millions, but
yeah, same.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe he's got some sort of stream deal that we don't know about, but I thought that, and that seemed to be pretty agreeable across a couple different news outlets I looked at. Didn't look like that was sort of a hearsay type thing. So,
all right, so so that's Alex Honnold. Like, we'll keep an eye on this guy and see what he's up to next. Hopefully, he decides to do something that's like not free solo and it's just a cool adventure somewhere. I really love the Greenland special that he did, so maybe he'll do something like that.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend. I'll put that in the show notes. But moving on to New Hampshire stuff here, Nick. So we got a ton of snow over the weekend here, and then also bitter cold. So I think that from what I could tell, most people stayed in. I saw a few people posting that they had gone out and hiked this weekend, but like it was mostly experienced people or people that weren't going in crazy locations. So good for everyone in New Hampshire, I guess.
Yeah, it seemed like everybody used good judgment. I mean, there definitely were some people that got out, but I don't think I saw anybody that kind of didn't do a sort of poke up to tree line and scurry back down sort of thing. Like you said, if you do really want to get out there and test your gear and how it functions in that kind of degree, I mean, you can do it if you're experienced enough for sure. So good on everybody for sort of heeding the warnings. Yeah.
What's the snowfall total so far, Nick?
So this was interesting, and this actually just came up from the observatory right before we hopped on. But Mount Washington actually has a snowfall total for January of 46.9 inches. That was with this last winter storm, and they said it kind of dumped a lot of powder this last particular storm, but it's actually over the normal average of 41.4 inches of snow. I'm not sure about December numbers. I know November was very close to breaking the record for snowfall as well this year. But I think it fell just short kind of towards the end and ran out. So it seems like we're getting a good amount of snow up there. I know there's been a couple rainstorms that have kind of thawed it out, but it seems like all the snowmobile trails are back in business, to say the least, after this last storm. I think it's not going anywhere either with this cold that we've got.
Yeah. So all this week's going to be cold, and then into next weekend is going to be cold. So it's sort of like, I think that the warnings are going to wear off and people are going to go hiking next weekend for sure. But it will still be bitterly cold. So just be careful. Keep an eye on the forecast and don't go above tree line if you're not prepared to experience significant cold weather. So like I'm thinking about, like, we'll talk about this later, but I'm thinking like Tecumseh or something like that will be where I'll be heading up.
Yeah, that's doable. I'm kind of watching Sunday. I know they said we might get a little snow around here again, so I'm hoping maybe I can at least sneak up, but probably try to do something sheltered. It does look like there might be sort of a little bit of a warm-up Saturday, Sunday after some really bitter cold pushing through Thursday, Friday, but it's still too early to tell with mountain weather, but I'll be looking up as well.
And I've noticed, Nick, on the local media, the Hampshire Fish and Game has gotten out there, and they've had some articles on New Hampshire Public Radio. They've had some on the local TV channels as well. Just various members of Fish and Game have highlighted the risks of winter hiking, and they've called out a couple of incidents around folks that had gotten in trouble on Mount Lafayette, and then recent rescue that we're going to talk about in a minute on Moosilauke, and then some other cases. So basically Fish and Game is just getting the word out to say, like, make sure you're hiking smart, you're hiking safe, that you've got all your gear, that you're not going to places where you're not capable of getting back down from. So we'll link those articles in the show notes so you can check them out. But it definitely seems like Fish and Game, had somebody on their public relations side just get a couple of articles written to just get that out in the public.
Yeah, and Mike, you've been hiking in the winter longer than I have, but my general take on this winter so far is it seems like it's not so specifically like we've had a lot of these warnings and really cold wind chill days, but it seems like we've had some pretty prolonged stretches of this happening too, and it's been like a frequent, like every week and a half, it seems like that Arctic front keeps dropping down and getting these like -60, -70, or even it was almost -90 wind chill on Mount Washington. I was watching it Friday night, which is really cold.
Yeah, I would say for the last at least 4 or 5 years, there have been these Arctic blasts that have hit us, and it's pretty consistent. Like, we usually get 3 or 4 of them, and the word gets out for people to say, like, hey, don't do anything crazy, stay below tree line and stay safe. So I think we're just in that cycle. This seems totally normal to me from that perspective. That because I can think about, like, I got out with Stomp one year. We did Liberty and Flume in ridiculously cold weather. I got out one time on Mount Jackson with my friend Tom, where we did ridiculously cold weather. And I think that, like, that isolation hike that we did last year was another one of those days where it was insanely cold. So you get used to it. I think the big thing is just make sure that you have the right layers on, that you're moving. And I always tell people, like, bring ground insulation, make sure you bring a sleeping bag so that you can basically hold up if you need to, and then hot liquid for sure. And then the rest of your 10 essentials.
Yeah, it was funny. Cause I mean, it was cold enough around here on, it would have been Saturday and Sunday, kind of when the snow started, but it was like a -10 wind chill just even in Rehoboth over here. And I told my in-laws and some of my wife's family that I went running, and I think a lot of them think I'm insane. Which it wasn't pleasant running in those digits, but I'm also like, I've hiked in temperatures colder than not 8 or 9 degrees before. So you kind of just bundle up for it and expect not to go as fast as usual, and was able to, but it was cold. I had mittens on, which I don't think I ever do.
It's character building, young Nick.
Yeah, that's why I'm out there, Mike.
That's right. You need to build your character. So just on to this next art. So we didn't get to this one last week, but there was a rescue on Saturday, January 17th. And this one happened this would have been the same day that we had done our hike with the Vanderfleet Fest crew. So the weather conditions, I'm assuming that they were similar on Moosilauke, than they were, like, low visibility, high winds, cold conditions. So these two skiers and skiing's a pretty common. I think people go up Corge Brook, and it's pretty straightforward to skin up there and then ski down. But two skiers got lost in deep snow and blizzard-like conditions on the summit of Moosilauke. They were experiencing strong winds, no visibility, and they lost a trail and were stuck in a drainage and waist heat. I think they ended up on the northern side of the mountain. So maybe they came up that way. I don't know. But they had like 2% battery life on their cell phone and no warm gear or lights to continue. So conservation officers and the Pemi Valley Search and Rescue Team staged a warren and utilized snowmobiles. They got all the way up the old carriage road to get 4 miles up Mount Moosilauke, and then they had to hike another 1.5 miles. So I think they got up to the top, and then they had to hike down about 1.5 miles in the drainage on the north side of the mountain, and extremely deep snow, thick trees, and they were able to locate the skiers. So it was one person unfortunately, the 2 people from Massachusetts, Cambridge and Somerville, early 30s that were out there. So they were out adventuring, and they just got in over their head. So luckily the snowmobiles could get up there, Nick, because otherwise I don't think anyone was hiking up there.
No, I'm sure with again, you were driving home in that, and the weather conditions weren't great, and they're lucky. I mean, most White Mountain trails, you're not getting snowmobiles up 4.5 miles or whatever. I mean, effectively almost to the spur for South Peak, I think, is where they were taking them to. So yeah. So it's and they ended up. So the call came in at 5 p.m. They ended up getting them out of there at like 2 a.m. On Sunday. So long night out there for those 2 skiers, and they ended up. I guess they had to do that 1.5 mile hike back to the snowmobiles, and then they got the snowmobiles got everyone back down the mountain. So that's a nice sign that they at least were able to get down there quickly. But just don't take chances. Yeah, absolutely. I go to imagine too, not to put down lightly, like I could see taking a snowmobile up there, but it seems like it would be kind of an intense ride going down that, because it's not a super wide trail to put a snow sled on.
I bet, especially in those conditions with low visibility.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's got to be slow going even with a snowmobile, But anyway, Nick, last week we talked about New Hampshire's looking for money, it seems like. They were talking about a toll increase. Now there's a proposal that would require bike owners to pay an annual registration fee, which would be, I think, $50 a year. Yeah,
it looks $50 annually. I think our buddy Jakester shared this to sort of our hiking group chat. And that's why all the jokes ensued about me not knowing how to ride a bike. If the listeners didn't know that, I never learned how to ride a bike growing up. And apparently the crew's going to teach me at some point. But if I do learn how to ride a bike, it looks like we're going to have to pay potentially a $50 annual fee. And it's for every bicycle up there, including e-bikes. There's a plethora of sites and forums that are objecting this tax. It seems like a lot of New Hampshire people aren't fans of it. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, look. You can't say that you got to live free and die state, and then you're going to charge $50 for bicycles. It's just embarrassing.
It doesn't seem like, I know Mass and Rhode Island, I don't think got bike taxes, right? Like, it seems like a very odd thing to tax to me.
Yeah, well, you get a lot of yahoos on social media that you hear the same thing where people, like, they're in a rush everywhere, and they'll say, like, oh, well, the bikes cause all kinds of traffic and they don't pay. Yeah. Let me tell you something. Those guys wearing the spandex, Nick, you know the guys wearing the spandex driving
I know those dudes, yeah.
You know how much those bikes cost?
Oh, probably like almost something. You can go upwards of $1,000.
3, 4,
right?
5. Yeah, we're paying sales tax. We're paying a lot of these bicyclists. They're rich. I'm telling you, Nick, they're rich. They're paying their taxes. So enough with the saying we don't pay our bill. But yeah, you do hear this a lot. It's like, oh, well, we have to register my car. You should register your bike. So I think that's what this is.
Well, it's definitely certainly seems it's unpopular with both New Hampshire and non-New Hampshire residents.
Yeah. And it's this. We sent this around to our little chat group that we have, and we were joking around. We were saying, imagine that we're just out here trying to teach Nick how to ride a bike, and we all get arrested.
Yeah, we all literally get arrested because the bikes are unregistered. We're like we're in like the old man parking lot or something. You guys are trying to teach me how to ride a bike, and we all get arrested.
Sir, your Huffy is unregistered. Please put your hands behind your back. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on this. I mean, New Hampshire legislation's crazy. Anybody can propose a bill, and it can get news articles, but it has to pass, and then the governor has to sign it. And I don't think Governor Ayotte's going to sign this one.
Yeah, it seems silly.
All right. What's this next one? Well, you must have added this one, Nick. Aloka, the dog of peace, is walking. I never saw this.
So
one.
This was actually a Stomp one that he shared.
Well, I mean, the dog's name is Aloka. He's a peace dog, and he's doing a 2,300-mile walk for peace across America, spreading peace and kindness and love. So
sounds pretty lovely.
Looks like a cute dog. Yeah,
it does.
All right. I want to see this dog's GPS records. I don't trust any of these, like, I'm going to walk across the country. They all cheat.
Going to make sure that he qualifies on, like, FKT and all those other sites.
Yeah, he better submit his GPS records. So, but yeah, we'll keep an eye on this one. Thank you, Stomp, for putting this on here, and we'll try to get more information on this. We don't really know much. But this next article, I pulled this. So a skier was mauled by a snow leopard, Nick.
This makes me cringe just, like, thinking about this. And I also, like, I honestly really like snow leopards. Like, they're one of my favorite animals to look at the zoo. Like, Roger Williams over here has one, and there's an Amur leopard in Capron Park in Attleboro that usually we'll see. Really impressive, beautiful animals, but I could imagine they could do some damage if one decided it wanted to attack you. And it looks like Nick, it did.
This whole snow leopard thing inspired me after you had explained to me the difference between a lynx and a bobcat. I went and Googled what the difference is between a regular leopard and a snow leopard. So I'm going to give you the rundown. The primary location for a leopard is sub-Saharan Africa, parts of the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia, while a snow leopard is in Central and South Asia, in the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau and in Mongolia. A leopard's typical habitat is savannas, forests, jungles, and scrub, even near cities, and then a snow leopard is high-altitude mountains and cliffs. So the regular leopard is at sea level. The snow leopard is at 9,000 to 18,000 feet. So they can breathe in those conditions pretty impressively. The climate for regular leopards is warm to temperate. The climate for snow leopards is cold, alpine, and brutal. The overall build for regular leopards is lean, sleek, and athletic like me. And then snow leopards are stocky, compact, and power built like Dave shits in the woods.
I was going to say, I like that comparison. So Dave is a snow leopard.
He's a snow leopard and I'm a leopard. Okay. Fur color, leopard is yellow to golden. Snow is pale gray to white. And then spots, the leopard's small. The snow leopard's larger, fuzzier. And then the tail, the big difference is like the leopards are long, relatively thin, and then the snow leopard has a thick, super fluffy tail. And then the hunting style is the leopards ambush the predators and drag the kill into the trees. And then the snow leopards stalk their prey on the slopes and then ambush them downhill. So they both ambush, but just different ways.
Interesting.
The snow leopard apparently does not drag their kill into the trees. It just eats it outright, which takes us back to this article here where, good Lord, this is like, so the skier was mauled by a snow leopard in China near the Mongolian border. So she's out there, she was all dressed up in her snow gear.
Well, and I feel some sympathy, but you know what? Both leopards, I don't think you shouldn't do around either of them, Mike, is you shouldn't try to take a photo.
Yeah,
with
take
yourself.
a selfie.
Don't take a selfie with either of them because I don't think they like it, and it's probably not worth the selfie.
Yeah, so this lady decided to do like the Taurons of Yellowstone Park, and so they spotted the snow leopard on the ski slope. Yeah, exactly. And she walked up to it. She got within 10 feet of the leopard to take a selfie, and the leopard then jumped on her face and knocked her over into the snow. And there's a picture of the leopard, and eventually some of the other skiers and a ski instructor chased the snow leopard away by waving their poles. The victim was, I guess, lucky because she was wearing a ski helmet, but she still had to be rushed to the local hospital where she was in stable condition. So Chinese authorities have now issued warnings to visitors of multiple recent snow leopard sightings in the area. So they are large predators with strong aggressive tendencies, so don't go close to them. So that's it.
Yeah, whenever I see these, Mike, did you ever watch the old, I think it was like the Planet Earth specials that were kind of a big deal when they came out? Do you ever watch any of those on like Discovery?
I watched like Mutual of Omaha would do their like documentaries or whatever. So, but yeah, I see all these things. Like I saw enough of these documentaries, Nick. You do not mess with these animals.
Oh no, I was gonna say. I remember there's a scene where this poor cameraman's probably sitting out for like a week or whatever, but they get it on film where like this leopard's like hunting like a mountain goat or something, like running downhill, like down a cliff effectively, and then catches it, and it's like, oh my god, like the athleticism of these animals, and also how aggressive they are. Like this article mentions, and how great they are at taking down prey is just. I have no desire to be near one without a cage. I'm good.
Right. In other news, I saw on Reddit today that there's a mountain lion that's just been cruising around San Francisco. He's been sighted in it's in like stairwells. It's been in alleyways. People have been walking home at night from the bar and they see this mountain lion crossing the street. They're like, everyone's like, the mountain lion's in San Francisco living in one of the parks somewhere.
They seem to, like, between that and the beer article that we covered a little while ago, it seems like they have their issues with animal control in some of those cities on the West Coast.
Can you imagine being out drinking at the bar and then all of a sudden like a mountain lion walks across you the street? I would be like, I must be dreaming.
Mountain lion in your stairwell?
Yeah. There's a picture of the mountain lion is like the guy's trying to get to his house and the mountain lion is just sitting on the front steps.
I'd be like, I need to go. I'm going to go to my buddy's house tonight. I think it's just not my night.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, I'm going to go inside somewhere.
Yeah.
But all right, more silliness here. So we have an article of a hiker that was rescued he was having hypothermia. We'll have to get our friend Stosh on here because this happened in the Catskills. But 33-year-old hiker was rescued on January 17th after attempting to traverse 4 peaks in the Catskill Mountains. So I guess this hiker had started late in the afternoon on Friday, January 16th, when this unnamed hiker decided to hike Table Mountain, which is a little under 4,000 feet in the Catskills, and there was a ranger out there on routine patrol that came across the hiker. The ranger expressed concern over the late start, but the hiker was confident in their ability, had the proper gear, and proceeded. So he said, I got this. So fast forward 12 hours later at 12:27 a.m. on Saturday, the hiker sent an SOS signal from a satellite device that requested first responders to Fisherman's Path. So at 12 hours later, he said he doesn't have this, Nick.
Yeah, I got to imagine there was probably a little bit of debate whether he wanted to reach out to them after he was warned ahead of time. I don't know, maybe not. I guess.
Think call. Always call if you need a rescue.
Oh, absolutely. But the irony of him brushing it off and then.
Yeah, that would be a little bit of humble pie, unfortunately.
Yeah,
but again, I still say call, eat the humble pie. It's better to live to hike another day than to save your ego. So I guess what he ended up doing is he switched up his plan. He ended up doing like a longer hike. Maybe he was feeling better at that time, but he ended up falling into a water source somewhere. And by the time that the rescuers got there, he was visibly suffering from hypothermia. And they were able to get to the victim, change him out into dry clothes, use a heating blanket, and provide hot liquids. And at that point, the hiker was able to reach the trailhead with the rescuers, and then they sent them off for medical attention to take a look at some blistering and some swelling in some areas of his extremities. So all's well that ends well. And I guess this guy did Table Mountain, and then he went over to Lone and Pika Moose and the Rocky Mountain section. So long day, but unfortunately for him, it didn't turn out that great.
Yeah, and good job to the Rangers for getting out there and getting him.
Right. So.
Are you ready for Slasher's Gear Review?
All's well. So you always got to keep warm, Nick, in the winter.
I try. It's key and not get sweaty.
It is. So I figured we would, we got a little gear review section here. I figured we'd just revisit. We've talked about a bunch of different gear, but I don't know if we've talked, I think you had done, like maybe you'd mentioned about hiking boots, but I figured we would pull up a little bit about hiking boots to talk about some good brands, and then also just break down the difference between 400 gram and 200 gram Thinsulate boots and when you should use them and when you should not.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, I think we actually both have the same boots, right? We have the 400.
I have Keen Revel 4 high polars, which are 400 grams.
That's what I've got as well. They might not be the Revel 4s, but they're definitely Keen Rebels with the 400 gram Thinsulate.
Yeah, and I like them. It's a wide toe box. I've evolved with my boots. I think I used to have like a 200 gram pair of Solomon. I forget what they were, but I kind of fell in this issue where my feet started getting cold. And I think my issue was not so much the boots as it was I was like doubling up on socks. So when I used to first hike, I would have like thin liner socks, and then I would have these heavy, thick wool socks, and then I would stuff them into the boots, and I think I had some circulation issues. So that's when my epiphany on this whole thing was I always advise people, essentially like the 400 gram Thinsulate is just the amount of insulation that's in the boots, and you can get 400 gram and they'll be a little bit heavier, they'll be a little bit warmer, and sort of the cutoff for me is like 30 degrees or higher, then your feet will really start sweating in these things. 200 gram or lighter, they're usually less expensive too. But where you start getting in trouble is probably, when it gets below like 20 degrees or so, then they could be prone to not being warm enough for you. But it's really very specific to the individual. So if you want to save a little bit of money and you're trying out winter hiking, like start with 200 gram and don't go out on crazy days. If you know you're committed, then go with the 400 gram boots. But my advice is that don't go heavy on the socks. Just a mid-weight, Darn Tough, or even a liner sock is fine with 400 gram. And the key in my view, for staying warm is the circulation, and make sure that you're not cutting off your circulation. So the socks shouldn't be too tight and they shouldn't be too thick. So just make sure that everything has got plenty of room to circulate on your feet.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the circulation comment, my thought on that too is one thing I know I personally struggle with too is also if you tighten your snowshoes too tight around your boots, like when you're initially kind of getting used to wearing them, that also can cut off your circulation a little bit, which I think people don't like. You want your snowshoes to be, it depends on the type of binding type you have, but you don't want them to fall off obviously, but you also don't want to be constricting your feet to the point that like if you can really feel those snowshoe bindings like digging in on the side of your boot and through the leather, that's probably a sign that, number one, it's going to be uncomfortable. Number two, it's absolutely going to limit the amount of blood flow that are getting down into your feet.
Right.
And Mike mentioned, everybody is unique. Like I know we've had people on who like can hike in trail runners even in the winter and their feet are fine. Like disregarding sort of the temperature. I find that since I switched to those 400 gram insulated, like you said, I can wear like a normal hiking sock. Like I don't wear like or double up layers or anything. And I was coming from, like, I suspect many people, or maybe I was just stupid, but I actually wore just sort of my 3-season whatever Merrells and used to double up socks and put toe warmers on and all these things. So it was kind of cool experiencing what warm feet feel like in the winter for once. Right. It was pretty great kind of going to that the first time. And the one addition to, and because I just did this maybe a couple weeks ago, as your boots get older, especially if you have some sort of waterproofing thing on it, a lot of times it'll sort of wear off. You can buy products from a couple different companies. I like to use the products that Nick makes. You can use leather cleaner, and you can also use leather waterproofer. And they're waterproofer. They have a couple different ones now, but you can use them for like Gore-Tex products and things like that. Leather gloves. Which can kind of, it to me, it's not going to like make your feet warmer per se, but it will help your boots from getting super wet, especially if you've got snowshoes on, or maybe you take a dunk in a creek accidentally and it's not cold enough to freeze up. I just find it can be really helpful on the footwear.
Right. And typically the way that these boot manufacturers will run is they'll have a 200 gram and a 400 gram option. So Obos is a good example. Obos has 10-inch Bridger insulated that are 400 gram, and then they have Obos Bridger 8 inches, which is insulated at 200 gram. So basically you've got a high boot and a midsole boot. I prefer the high boots. Keen is the same deal. Keen has Revel 4, and they have a high polar, and then they have a mid polar, and the mid polar is 200 gram, and the high polar is 400 gram. And then, North Face and Columbia, Salomon's another example. They have Tundra, which are the 400 gram, and then they've got the Cross Track. And Salomon's got a number of different brands across both the 400 and the 200 gram. And then, so I'll link this in the show notes. Section Hiker has his top 10 list, and I think this is pretty good. I'd say probably the ones that are missing are probably like Vask Snow Bourbon 2s. Those are pretty popular. I find that the toe box on those is a little too narrow for me. But yeah, there's a bunch of different boots here. You can even, I think that there's even 600 gram or 800 gram, and those are probably better for like snowmobiling or ice climbing. I don't really know the deal with those, but for hiking, it's generally 400 gram.
Oh yeah, it's if you're kind of going out, like, it made me think of, because I was out ice fishing last week, but I have actually some old Sorel boots that I got, I think when I was like 17 or something. That was like a rite of passage sort of in my family with the guys that ice fished, is you'd get like a pair of boots when your feet stopped growing, and those things are very toasty. I don't know what they're insulated with, but you certainly wouldn't want to use those for hiking. They're not meant to do that. Right.
And in general, the temperature ratings that I see is like essentially 200 gram is 20 degrees to about 32 degrees. 400 gram is 0 to 20 degrees, depending on, what the recommendations are. But like, I've been out in my boots in much colder weather than that, and I felt fine. So
yeah, I think to a degree too, when you're out in the real cold, if you got snow, is like everything kind of just freezes around your feet anyways, which I think actually helps insulate it to some degree. Mm-hmm. And one thing when you're talking about wearing them when it's too warm, when we did that hike in the Belknaps last year, that was kind of shoulder seasony in April. And it was like, I don't know if it was like 40 or it probably hit 50 degrees that day. I was wearing my Keens and my feet were absolutely roasting hot. Yeah. Like, it was unpleasantly hot. So learned my lesson with that.
I think that was my first hike with Trail Runners of the Year. There.
Oh, I was so jealous of all of you that had trail runners.
Yeah, that's the best feeling ever, by the way. The first hike with the trail runners. So,
yeah. That's the flip side.
Yeah, but that's the deal with boots, folks. So we'll link those in the show notes so you can check it out. And like I said, if you don't know, go with the 200 gram, test them out, and you'd be a little bit cheaper. But if you know you're going all in, then get yourself a nice pair of 400 gram.
Yeah, and these are going to last you for a while too, typically. So you can spend some money.
Hey, what's that sound? it must be time for the pop culture segment with Mike and Stump.
Got it. All right. So we'll skip the dad jokes. We're running up on time here. So pop culture talk. So Patriots are going to the Super Bowl. So that's good news. And I don't know if this is you or Stomp, but I think there's like an anniversary of Pulp Fiction that came out, and Stomp loves Pulp Fiction. So
I didn't know if there was an anniversary, but me and Ash were just watching this over the weekend.
Okay.
We hadn't seen Pulp Fiction in a while. Yep. Have you seen Pulp Fiction, Mike?
Oh yeah, many times.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, we hadn't seen it in a while. It's one of Ash's favorite movies. I love the soundtrack and stuff. And we kind of were throwing it in there. If you haven't seen it, I think it's worth going out. That was my supplanted music recommendation. I figured that Pulp Fiction was a good movie, Rec, if you haven't seen that. It is incredibly violent. Caveat, if you haven't seen Pulp Fiction and didn't know that it was, but it's a great story. John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, a lot of famous people in it. Harvey Keitel. Great movie.
Bunch of weird side quest plots that pop up, and you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah, Bruce Willis, a lot of different things.
Yeah, so that's a great movie. So excellent. So now's the part of the show, Nick, where we do a plug for the Alzheimer's Association.
Yeah, so use your passion for hiking to end Alzheimer's. Join 400 plus hikers as they climb New Hampshire's 4,000 footers or create their own challenge to support the mission of the Alzheimer's Association. The annual hiker celebration will be Saturday, June 13th at Ledge Brewing with raffles, food, and an amazing community. Hike that weekend or any day you want this summer. No fundraising minimums, but those who raise $125 will receive the annual performance grade t-shirt and a ticket for the hiker celebration. Let's turn the White Mountains purple to end alls. Visit alls.org/48peaks to learn more.
Very good, Nick. Very good. All right, This is the part of the show where we talk about if you need stickers, you can go to Ski Fanatics or Spinners Pizza Parlor. And Nick, I've been slacking again. I did not get that sticker order going, but I promise I will. Do that. And then if you want to get Slasher swag, go check out our bonfire shop. So you can choose between our super popular hoodies, classic or V-neck tees, and more. The color selection is great, and they are priced to move. So help spread the word about Slasher and represent today.
Yeah, I'm realizing my wife was saying I probably should wash mine at some point soon because I think I've been living in it with this cold quite frequently lately when I'm hanging around the house. She's like, when was the last time you washed it? I'm like, I don't know. I probably should throw it in the laundry, but it's very comfy and I don't want to.
No, it's you can be stinky, Nick. It's
I'm alone in my office.
That's right, exactly. So, all right, and then next up here, so coffee. So if you want to help support the podcast, you can donate at Slasher's Buy Me a Coffee site. Donations help us pay for web hosting, distribution, live events, and stickers. So shout out to Alex M. He bought 4 coffees for us. So
thank you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Did he leave a heartfelt note to us?
I don't think so. I think he just donated.
What a guy.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Alex.
Hey, hold my beer. It's time to find out what Mike and Stomp are drinking on this week's Beer Talk.
All right, and then next up here, this is the part of the show where we talk about whether we're drinking beer or not. I'm just drinking water tonight, Nick.
You just got water. So I got my Athletic, which seems to be the standby on Tuesday nights, but I did indulge during the Patriots game and in between snowblowing on Sunday, though it seemed like I didn't snowblow at all by the time Monday morning came. But I did want to shout out, if you are in southeastern Mass in my neck of the woods, check out Canned Heat down at Fall River. And have you ever heard this joke about the Braga Bridge in Fall River, Mike? The longest bridge?
No, I don't know.
You don't know the lore?
I don't know anything about Fall River or New Bedford. To me, it sounds very scary down there. So.
All right. I'll lay a little lore on you. So there's a long-standing joke that they call the Braga Bridge is the longest bridge in the world. Do you know why?
I don't know why.
So, and just to highlight, this is the bridge that connects from Somerset to Fall River. It goes over the Ton River. But it is the longest bridge in the world because it goes all the way from Somerset to Portugal. Because there's a lot of Portuguese people in Fall River, so that's the running joke. Okay. Yeah, but anyways, they make a longest bridge hazy pale ale. Thanks, Ash, my wife, for getting it for me for Christmas. It was a great game time brew, and we've actually been over there at the brewery before, and they have good stuff and a kind of nice location there on the water. So...
There was a social media thing going on I don't know how long ago, maybe a couple of months ago. It was on like TikTok or one of those, and it was like somebody had like taken these beautiful photos of like scenic parts of Portugal, and they had sort of panned back about like the mountains and the oceans, and then somebody was like, imagine living here and then saying, I know just the thing, I'm going to move to Fall River.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. Like my wife's grandparents are actually from the mainland, along with my father-in-law, and where they live was like it's beautiful, and it was kind of hilly and stuff, but like there's places like Nazaré down there that are just absolutely like gorgeous, and it's like I wonder why people would leave those communities when you live there. It seems very like paradise, but I don't know. Yeah. Beautiful places everywhere. Not partial to maybe Fall River. I'm sorry, Fall River people, but
yeah, it is interesting. So I don't know much about Fall River in New Bedford, other than it used to be a rough part of town. I guess George Stephanopoulos, he was born in Fall River. That's what I know.
Interesting.
So, Hank the Angry Dwarf was in, Drunken Dwarf was from Fall River too.
Emerald Lagasse, Fall River.
Oh yeah, true. So.
I knew we should have gone left back there.
Stomp, don't worry. I know it's this way. I've got a feeling in my gut.
Are you sure you're not about to have a bowel emergency?
Totally. We got this.
But I just blew out my hip. Fell down that gully with my 40-year-old microspikes.
Suck it up, Stomp. It's 4 p.m. We're at 3,500 feet. We got 9 miles back to the parking lot. Your leg may be broken. We got no cell connection, and we can't feel our fingers. But we're finishing all of my list tonight. By the way, I need some water. I'm empty.
I would if I could see what I'm doing, but my headlamp batteries are dead.
You gotta be kidding me. What a chump. This is the last time I hike with you.
Whatever, mister.
Do you know me? I have a podcast.
Whatever.
Let's find out what Mike and Stomp have been hiking.
All right, Nick, this is the part of the show where we talk about where we had hiked recently. So I have nothing. I just went out and shoveled and snowblowed. We talked about why we didn't hike, but have you gotten out at all?
So I was doing a lot of the same. I did get out actually this afternoon on my lunch break, and I went snowshoeing in Rehoboth State Forest. So the State Forest, it's maybe like 7-ish minutes from our house. I go there with Rylan a lot after daycare, at least when it was lighter out. But there was like, I don't know, shin-knee deep snow in a lot of it. It was broken out a little bit by some of the cross-country skis. And it was also, it was kind of funny. I was joking with Ash that she was like being my chaperone or something, because I actually had her drop me off and then pick me up, because the parking lot is completely like full of snow and there's no way you could get a car in and out of there. And even I think a truck would be a struggle right now. But yeah, some really deep snow in the woods. And it was interesting with following some of the trails that we follow. I was always curious and assumed that deer, it's like in New Hampshire too, like you assume deer and moose and stuff use those trails. But like one of the trails I was on, there was like a half a mile section where it was just deer prints throughout the whole thing, which made it kind of easier to follow through the woods. But it's kind of cool to see that the animals use the sort of obvious route through the woods as well.
Yeah, no, I've seen that too in my local woods. So cool stuff. And then, this weekend, I'm getting out, I don't know where. I was thinking about Tecumseh or Avalon. Matter of fact, I'm going to ask you a question. So I want to do Tecumseh, but I may not be there until like later in the morning. So is it like not worth it to mess around with Waterville Valley if you're going to get a late start hiking? Because I'm assuming like the parking lot's going to be full, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it actually fills up, because they have a lot of overflow lots, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you'll have an issue. You might have a really long walk back to your car, though, or from the car.
That's what I'm thinking, too, yeah.
Maybe could make Stomp give you a shuttle if he's around.
True. That's a good point. So we'll see. We'll see how, because my plan B was going to be Avalon, maybe. Because my friend Jay, he's doing the 52 with the views, or maybe the 4,000 footers. He's kind of doing both halfway.
Yeah, those are solid plans. I think you guys looking at Saturday.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, I'm gonna look at. We're busy Saturday, so I'm praying not a lot of snow Sunday, and might try to maybe look at a grid peak or something. Maybe I feel like I haven't done the Hancocks in a while, and we were researching that for something else. So maybe I'll try to get over there. We'll see.
That's another good one too. So.
It's time for Slasher's Notable Hike of the Week. If you want to be considered for the Hike of the Week, simply tag Slasher on your social media post.
All right. Well, now's the part of the show where we do notable listener hikes of the week, Nick.
Yeah, we got a little bit of catch up, but we haven't been getting tagged much, which I feel like we go through lulls, but I'm assuming it's because a lot of people just haven't been doing a ton out there with the cold and also just with the snow at home and stuff. It makes it hard to get up. But our buddy Paul Lamar, Cannon via Lonesome Lake Trail and KRT, he ended up dodging High Cannon because he heard the upper portion was some gnarly ice. And apparently it was mostly socked in. And then he got taunted with blue skies when he was back in the parking lot, which fortunately happens in the winter. Our buddy Dan VDV just sort of tagged us in that Mount Jefferson attempt, which I shared some of our photos, some Mike's photos, some of my photos from that day up there on the Slasher page to show everybody what it looked like. Pretty interesting day up there with bad visibility, but everybody got down safe and we had beer and stuff after, so it was fantastic. Thanks again, Dan. Heart Disease Hiker 75 did Boulder Loop off the Kank. I have heard by a lot of people to check this out. I haven't checked it out myself. It looks beautiful. Have you done Boulder Loop, Mike?
Yeah, I've done it a couple times with the kids when they were little. It's nice, yeah. It's good, kind of an interesting view over the Kank that you don't see anywhere else. So yeah, it's nice.
Is it on like the Conway side more?
Yeah, it's on the Conway side. I forget how far down it is. I can't remember if it's before or after Lower Falls, but yeah, it's around that area.
All right. So our resident he was the snow leopard, right? We decided this guy, Mr. Dave Shits in the Woods, was the stockier leopard.
Yes, he's a snow leopard. Yeah.
He's the stockier. So the snow leopard, Dave Shits in the Woods, did Mount Caesar, Hughes Hill, and Honey Hill in Swansea, New Hampshire, which I didn't know existed. Then a second tag for Packmonadnock and Spruce Knoll and Peterborough. I don't know where the hell that came from. Peterborough/Temple, New Hampshire. Look like some really nice views on some of these. I want to get down to sort of that Wapak region and Packmonadnock. I haven't really explored there because I just look at the whites and I'm just partial and I go over there. So thanks, Dave, for showing us some of these less traveled places out there in New Hampshire that are beautiful. C. Gothberg hadn't tagged us in a while. Always beautiful photos. He's been on the podcast before. Broke out Blueberry to the West Ledges. Said 10 inches to thigh-high drifts in that area of western New Hampshire, or the Western Whites. So I'm imagining there's going to be a lot of trail breaking going on this weekend and this week.
I know. Every time I see him, I feel like guilty because I want to get out to like Mount Cube and that western area there, and I never do. But I got to hit him up and get out there. But yeah, that's impressive. It's probably a lot of work to get out to Blueberry right now.
Yeah, whole workout. I kind of had forgotten just even going around the forest here. Like you get a foot and a half of snow, even on mostly flat ground. It beats you up very quickly. And our friend Cami Fit 71 did Mount Tecumseh with a pretty epic sled down. They're like sledding pros, huh?
Oh yeah, they're awesome. So
like another level.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, they did Tecumseh and then sledded down. So yeah, I'll give Camilla and Lance the notable hike of the week and with the sled down because it was like continuous and nonstop sledding.
Oh yeah, and they videoed the whole thing successfully without like hitting a tree or anything. So that's pretty cool.
And there was much rejoicing.
So good for them. And then Nick, so now we're going to move into our segment where we welcome Jo Giese. So Jo has an interesting background. As a hiker out west, she's going to talk about a new book that she has coming out that talks about some of the struggles that she's gone through and how she overcame them. So let's go into that segment and we'll come out the other side and we'll do a little bit of White Mountain history.
All right. Sounds good. Let's do it.
Diddle it.
Boop.
It's time for Slasher's Guest of the Week. Very cool, very cool.
So, Jo, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast.
Oh, I am delighted to be here. Hiking is my favorite topic.
I'm a little nervous because we typically will ask guests like, oh, have you ever been on a podcast before? And a lot of times they'll say no, but you're like a professional radio journalist. So we've got to impress you with our professionalism.
Oh, please.
We're nervous.
Don't let me. Don't make you nervous. I'm fine. I loved working in radio. I was on NPR for 10 years at Marketplace, and it was a dream.
Yeah, it's crazy that you were. I mean, I would listen to that on the drive home from work before COVID, and I'm sure I've listened to you before, but I just, it's interesting to now have somebody from that show on our show.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here and to talk about my favorite subject, hiking.
Awesome, yeah, and we'll get into that. So, just as a quick introduction, so you're an award-winning journalist, you're a lifelong hiker, and then you're the author of the upcoming memoir, You'll Never Walk Alone, which is coming out in a couple of weeks, and it's a story of, I guess, just recovery and overcoming adversity. So we'll learn a little bit about that, but why don't you start off with just giving a little bit of background about yourself, maybe a little bit about your early years and your exposure to hiking and outdoor activities.
Oh, well, that's my big pleasure to do that. I started hiking, and I'm kind of putting that in quote marks, when I was 5 years old and lived in Seattle, Washington. We lived, my parents had a house right on the edge of Lake Washington Boulevard. And about a block from the house was Seward Park, which I didn't know at the time when I was 5, that it was designed by the Olmsted family, the same brothers that designed Central Park in New York City. So no wonder this park was so gorgeous. And it was like a block from the house. So at 5, I would set off in a little pinafore, lacy lace everywhere, that my mother had made for me. And I would walk over to the park. I'd take a couple pumps on the swing, and then I would walk into the bark path up in the old growth forest where the evergreen trees were 2 and 3 stories high. And I'd walk up. You could go all the way to the middle of the peninsula then. And then I'd walk back down. I'd walk home. And there was a retired cop who lived next door to us. And he said to my mom, you might consider that that's not a good thing to let her do by herself. And my mom, being the non-helicopter parent way back then, said, but she likes it. So I got to continue hiking by myself. But now, as an adult, I tell people, do not go alone. Do not go alone, especially like in Montana. There's too many things. Can I tell you a story?
Yeah, sure.
I was hiking not too long ago outside of Bozeman, Montana, where we have a place, and I tend to always hike to waterfalls. One day I was there with my hiking buddy, and we were coming down from this waterfall. And there was a group of, 5, 6 people. There was one person in the group who was much more elderly than everyone else. And she had an accident on that trail. And because she was with 4 or 5 other people, they sent there was no cell phone reception there. They sent someone down the trail to, call for help. By the time we got to the bottom of the trail, there were people there. There were medical people there with a gurney who were coming back up to put this elderly it turns out she'd broken her ankle. There was no
very common, way, right?
Well, there was no way she could have gotten out of there if she had been by herself. So I just tell people, please don't do that.
Right. Well, it's a good thing people were there. And how long did it take the rescue team to get there, in your opinion?
Oh, by the time we were down to the bottom, they were coming up with a gurney. I don't know how long that was. What was that? 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour? I don't know. But I was astonished because we were out really in the middle of nowhere. But the people who were with her, they must have raced down that mountain until they got reception and then dialed 911, and they got her help. And I was really grateful.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, when you got a little bit older, did you continue? Have you always hiked throughout your whole life, or did you have periods where you went away from it and then got back into it?
Well, that's a good question. Certainly the years when I lived in New York City, I wasn't hiking that much. And I think then when I met when I was introduced to my husband like 20 years ago, And he had the place in Montana, and I had the place in Southern California. And both of them are fabulous places to go hiking. And my favorite place to go hiking in the world, they just reopened Highway 1 going up to Big Sur. And they had closed it 3 years ago because of mudslides.
Right.
And they lost the highway. And we were reading that that it wasn't safe. They weren't going to reopen it. And but they did. And I just read that today in the New York Times.
When you were in New York, did you ever get out to the Northeast? You know, we're more of a Northeast-based podcast. Did you ever make your way to New Hampshire, the White Mountains?
I hate to say this on a New Hampshire show, but you invite me and I'll come, but
All right.
I have not been there yet.
We'll take you here during foliage season. You'll love it.
Good.
I can't promise our trails are very smooth, though. That's the one warning I'll give you.
Okay.
Excellent. So, a little bit about your background on media. I am curious about like how things have evolved from your perspective, and what your view is on podcast, and coming from more of a radio journalist background, and then specifically about the growth of like niche topics. Like this is a hiking podcast, but how have you seen, I guess, radio and audio journalism change over the years?
Well, frankly, I didn't know much about podcasts until I have this new book of mine, and I keep getting booked on podcasts. And so I was asking my PR team, what's with all these podcasts? And they said that this is really what gets the word out about books these days. And that with my previous book that came out 5 years ago, I did a lot of author events in bookstores, and I'm told that those are not as well attended now after COVID. People got used to the idea of not having to go out to bookstores to do this, and so podcasts seem to be the new it thing. And I tell you, I have a lot of fun doing them. The people who I've spoken to are all there's no animosity. There's no adversity. There's no, it's just fun. I mean, it's like meeting some new neighbors is how it feels to me. And apparently they're very successful in getting the word out. So I enjoy them. What about you?
Well, I think that I have always thought of, so, I spent years driving in my car and listening to, NPR and other, sports talk radio I listened to quite a bit. And I always felt like, it would be great if there was a way that you could listen to a podcast about hiking on the drive up. Because Nick and I live, 2 hours from the mountains, and it's a long drive, and there was nothing really available. So we just decided we're going to start our own. So it's not like we're super professional, but it's been a long time. And yeah, I think it's like you said, it's just a good way to get the word out about, like, our focus is on safety and information about hiking and fun stories and history. So it's been great, and we appreciate you joining us. I guess moving on to the specifics of your book and the background, can you give us maybe some details about what the start of this book is? It started with an injury. Can you tell us the background so the listeners have a understanding of where you're coming from?
Well, yeah, I'll tell you about the accident and everything. But the only reason that I really wrote this book is to inspire others when they're given a grim diagnosis. They don't have to accept it. Okay, this is what happened. It was November. It was 2018. It was the end of November. In Southern California, it is usually not raining, certainly not raining hard, the end of November. And a friend was coming to visit. She was ringing the doorbell downstairs. And I didn't want her to get wet out there. So I left my office. I ran out. I ran down the 2 flights of stairs. I missed the bottom 2 steps, and I went flying horizontally across the front entranceway there. And I knew something bad had happened. My husband heard the crash. He came and saw me, and I said, go let Lana in. She's getting wet out there. Open the door. And so my husband and Lana got me to urgent care. I was on crutches then. And in urgent care, the doctor's face just turned white after she saw the x-ray they had taken. And she said, I hate to tell you this, but you have a complete rupture of your left Achilles. And this is serious stuff. When, so I said, well, I got out my phone, and I had we had a little bit of a relationship with an orthopedic doctor in LA, and I had his cell phone number. I called him, and he said, sure, come in tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I'll see you first thing. So by that point, my husband had rented a wheelchair from urgent care. He drives me into Fred, we call him Fred, that's not his name, Fred's office, and they do some more x-rays. He doesn't even look at the x-ray. He's not even looking at my ankle. All he says to me is, he says, I can do this. He said, I have a complete tear in my left Achilles, but he said, I used to do Achilles repair 20, 30 years ago. I can do this. Now, Mike, if some doctor says to you that they did something that you need 20, 30 years ago, you would say, well, how about we find someone who did this 20, 30 minutes ago?
Right.
Yeah, understandably.
But instead, I'm there now. I'm in a wheelchair, and I'm not walking. It's very frightening. My leg has all turned purple and black. My arm that I used to really brace myself when I was falling has also turned purple and black. And there's someone in front of me who says he can do this. What we should have said is, thank you very much, Fred, but we're going to check out someone who does it now. And we would have ended up in New York City with the doctor I finally ended up with. But we went ahead. He did the surgery. And by the time, the bandages and the cast is taken off 12, 14 days later, he says to the nurse who's taking off the bandage, wait. He says, that's not healing. That's dyed. It's necrotic. Now,
oh my gosh.
I don't know. I don't know if I ever heard that word before, necrosis, but the wound itself around my ankle where the Achilles had been had turned into like a graveyard down there. It was awful. And so then what we have to deal with is this wound. Now we're not even talking about the Achilles. And
did you think that there was a possibility of amputation at that point?
I thought the most likely scenario might be sepsis, because this was so necrotic, and the sepsis would invade the rest of my body and not just hunker down there at my ankle. And so then I ended up at a trauma wound plastic surgeon, but this is not plastic surgery for to look pretty. This is plastic surgery to get rid of the necrosis, and that involved 2-3 more surgeries because they can't dig around down there where I'm awake. It's another surgery, and it was during one of those surgeries where they thought, okay, we're going to clean up all this necrosis, and then we're going to go back in and make sure that the Achilles reattached properly during that first surgery. And what they found out was awful. They found out the surgery that was supposed to take 3-4 hours, in less than an hour, I'm back in the recovery area. I know this is bad. And the doctor comes in and he says, and he's the trauma wound doctor, and he says there was nothing to reattach. The Achilles had died, it curled in on itself, and he showed me. So you want to see the picture of it? And it's the longest, strongest tendon in your body, in my body, our body, had curled in on itself like a little fetal thing, and it was a slimy, horrible mass. So now I have no Achilles, and the feeling goes, without an Achilles, you can't walk. You know, when Kevin Durant, let's take it, the basketball player. Yeah. Well, he had an Achilles rupture, but he still, they repaired it. He still had an Achilles. And in my case, mine had died. So it was about a month ago or so. I was talking to another doctor who had nothing to do with this bad, awful thing that happened. And I said, people are calling me a medical miracle because I'm walking now, 4 years later, and hiking. And I said, is that hyperbole, or is that really realistic, that to a medical miracle? And he thought about it for a while. He almost kind of left the room to think about it. And then he came back. He said, yeah, you're a medical outlier. Yeah, medical miracle. Yeah, that's fair. And because without an Achilles, he said, most people would be doing well if they could just walk around their living room and look at you. But it was a long haul.
You go through those stages of, like, obviously you go through the stages of, like, anger first, I'm assuming, then you go through second guessing to say, like, how did I find myself in this situation? And it's probably easy to get hung up in those stages of where you are mentally. But at some point you decided, like, I'm not going to let what happened in the past and this whole situation around how daunting this condition is stop me from at least trying. And then you keep trying and you keep trying, and eventually you have a little bit of success. So how did you get from probably that first stage of, like, being really angry and feeling a bit hopeless? How did you get past that to where you are now?
I'll tell you, I wasn't angry. I didn't waste my time being angry. I had to use all my energy getting better. A little side story. I have a sister-in-law who was recently diagnosed with breast cancer, and she spent a lot of time. And I don't want to, negate or downplay, how severe breast cancer can be. But she spent so much time talking about, why me? I eat everything right. I exercise right. Why did I get this? I didn't waste any time on that. I am too joyful about life. And I thought, we're gonna fix this. We're gonna try to fix this. And if somebody said to me, like one friend said to me, well, do you consider that you're now an ex-walker, an ex-hiker? And I went, no way, I'm going to get beyond this. And the physical therapist, I had one physical therapist I worked with about 8 months into this journey. And this was someone who I liked. I kind of thought we were friends. I mean, I had had her up to the house for lunch. Her mother had died, unfortunately, about the same time my mother died, and we commiserated over that. I thought I enjoyed her stories about her dad dating again in his 70s. So we knew each other a little bit. So she had me walk across the physical therapy room, and she watched me as I did it. And then she had me walk across, and then she had me come into her little office. And she said to me, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but you have to accept that you're going to be compromised for the rest of your life. And when she said that, I thought, no, I don't, and no, I won't. Now, that's when I got angry. She, as a medical professional, and that is like 8-9 months into this journey, it's probably the first time I really got angry like that, is I thought, you have, as a medical professional, all I had at that point was hope. the hope that I could walk again, the hope that I'm going to get better, the hope that I can hike these favorite mountains again. And you don't have the right as a medical professional to dash someone's hope when that's all they have left. I have never spoken to her again.
Wow. And then how do you finally settle on a physical therapist that you can work with through this then?
Well, that's an interesting question too. The doctor who botched my surgery, of course, he blamed it on me, like I kept the ice on too long or something stupid like that. At a certain point, he realized that I wasn't walking. He would send me these texts all the time. How are you doing? It was like poison darts. Leave me alone. Finally, he said, you might want to try CORE. CORE is a center of restorative exercise in Northridge. From where I live in LA to Northridge, where this center is, I thought, it's like asking someone to drive to London. It's so damn far. And I thought, I'll go once. And I wasn't driving then. I had to be driven. I said, I'll go once, but I'm not going to drive this far. Anyway, I went there, but it just showed how seriously this doctor knew my situation was, because CORE, most of the people at CORE have spinal cord issues. They have an orthopedic problem, which I clearly had, but they also have a neurological problem, which luckily I didn't have. So you go into this facility, and that's why this doctor knew how serious my problem was, is people just aren't walking in there. They are learning how to walk again. And the director there, Taylor Isaacs, had several PhDs in sports medicine. He'd worked with really serious conditions with all these people with spinal cord injuries who are using all these different devices to try to stand up. And he had never worked with anyone without an Achilles, but he said, I'm going to put my education to work on you. And we're going to direct all the energy on your situation. And one small story about how dedicated Taylor was to me is Taylor likes to stay up late. And I couldn't stay up late if you paid me. He stays up like till 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And he always comes into CORE a little late. Now, they usually open at 9:30. For me, he opened CORE at 8:30 because he wanted to come in early and really focus on this and see how much function I could start to regain. And then he put together a recovery program. He said, you got to consider that you're the CEO of the Jo Recovery Program. And this is what you have to do. You have to include a medical acupuncturist. You have to include shockwave therapy. You have to include a podiatrist and working at CORE 2 or 3 days a week. And at one point, I said to him, because I met the medical acupuncturist, he had an MD, but what he was doing was acupuncture. And I said to Taylor over at CORE, I said, do you know how long it takes me to get to Beverly Hills? He said, this is your job now, Jo. You're the CEO of your recovery program. This is part of your task. So I continued, and the doctor who was doing the acupuncture had never worked with someone without an Achilles either. He didn't know if this was going to work either. By the time I finally got to a doctor in New York City who specifically works with people who have lost an Achilles, he looked at my graveyard down there, and he didn't want to go near it. And he's someone who I always say is a designer orthopedics, because he takes little tendons from the big toe and make them into an Achilles. But in my case, it was such a graveyard that he didn't want to go near it. He said, go home, do as much physical therapy as you can, see how much function you can gain, and write down how many steps you're doing every day and how you feel doing them. So that's when I really connected even more strongly with CORE and with Taylor. And I remember that first December there, they gave a big Christmas party. And I said to Taylor, I said, well, I mean, this is so stupid on my part, but I said, I mean, will everybody be coming to the Christmas party in their wheelchairs? Well, yeah, Jo. I mean, they're coming. And I had thought kind of in the beginning, the first time I went to CORE, I thought, well, and especially like at that Christmas party, I thought, well, I tried to disassociate myself from this population, this really disabled, severely disabled population. But there's no getting around it. I was part of that population for 144 days. I got around using a knee scooter, and
what's the without the Achilles? There's other tendons, obviously, in your ankle and foot. Or is it just a matter that those other tendons have now compensated for what the Achilles normally would do?
Well, that's maybe part of the story. That working with Taylor for 2.5 years, we got some of the other muscles in that area to kick in and work. But I have to tell you, I walk at half the speed I used to walk. Right. And I would say to Taylor, I'd be out walking on the road in front of our house here, and people would be whizzing by me. And I'd say to Taylor, people are whizzing by. I'm walking so slow. And he says, to compare is to despair. Stop it.
Right.
And so I won't say I've gotten used to walking that much slower, but it's what I do now. I went on a sunrise hike in Montana last summer, and it was weird to me that I think this was the first sunrise hike I ever went on.
Right.
They had, it's Montana in the summer, so it's 39 degrees or something. A lot of the country would not think that's a summer hike. But they had big pots, big fires going, and so you could cuddle around. And so, and there must have been about 30 people there. And so at a certain point, they said, okay, we're going to start off on the hike. And it was really a very gentle hike. It was a hike I'd done many times before. And so we started off, and before my accident, I would always be at the front of the hike, with the leader, loving to just zoom up the mountain. And I was kind of at the back, and I was talking to this guy, and he was telling me that he had just returned from Taiwan, and from his hotel room in Taipei, he could step out and just start hiking up the mountain. It just sounded fabulous. But as the group kind of kept hiking, regular speed, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I said to him, go ahead, the group is, and he was really concerned. He didn't want to leave me. And I said, no, go ahead. But on the way home, and I found myself back at the trailhead, and it was a real learning lesson for me. I can't hike with a group like that anymore because I can't hike at that speed anymore. I'll tell you another story, because I think now I'm doing pretty well. I mean, I'm walking, I'm hiking. My first big test was in Montana, just walking down our driveway to see if I could do that.
What was it like when you, at least in the physical therapy, when you first started walking again? obviously there's a validation there where you're like, yep, I knew I could do this. But was it an emotional moment, or was it just part of a natural progression from how you were working through the PT?
Oh, there was nothing natural about it. I went to a couple PT physical therapists first before I got to the core place. It was hard. One of the first PT people I went to, most of these people had never worked with anyone without an Achilles, so they didn't know what they could do, what they should do, what might help, and they just gave it their all, and it was a hard row. And some of it wasn't very much fun. The shockwave therapy. Shockwave therapy was originally developed for racehorses, and it's so effective on the ankles of racehorses. And racehorses have those little ankles, and the shockwave therapy was so effective on healing racehorse ankles that they disallowed it on race days because it gives the horses an advantage. So they started doing shockwave therapy on me. It hurt like hell. And I'm not sure that it helped me win a race, but I'm no horse either. But so we really tried everything. And the first time after I made it down our driveway, I told my husband that I wanted to go to Highlight. Highlight is this reasonable hike outside of Bozeman. It's about a 40-minute drive, mostly on a dirt road with bad potholes. And we get there on a July morning. It's cold. It's Montana. And I start off, of course, with my hiking poles, and I've got my bear bells attached to my hiking poles. You do not.
Well, that is one of the problems with slowing down, though, is that you always, especially if you're hiking in Montana, because you got the grizzlies, you do need somebody to hike with that's going to be slower than you, just in case the bear comes, so you can. They're the last one to get hit by the bear.
Well, in Montana, you have to have. Say, I have my bear whistle on for you guys today.
Yeah.
I have the bear whistle. I have the bear bell on my poles, and that day when I first went to do Highlight again to try it, we'd forgotten our bear spray, and but bear spray, as you might know, is tricky to use anyway. Yeah. You've got to know what you're doing. When you spray it, because we tried it once, when you spray it, if there's any wind blowing at all, you can have it back on your face, right, and you can end up in the hospital. So I shouldn't say this, but I'm not a big fan of bear spray unless you really know what the wind is doing that day. And then I was wearing, of course, my favorite oboes, hiking boots.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about these, yeah.
And I set off, and it's only about a mile to the waterfall, I think, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. And every now and then I would sit down, and I had my hiking poles, I had the right boots, I had, I had water with me, and my husband and I are doing this together. And he would circle around back for me, and he'd say, "We don't have to go the whole way this first time." And I'd say, no, I'm just resting here, just savoring that I'm back in this forest, this gorgeous forest. And I'm hiking to a waterfall, this person who I never thought I'd walk again. And at the end of it, Eddie got a picture of me, my husband, with my hiking poles raised up, and that was my Rocky moment. I did it. It's that, and I sent it to everybody. But the only real reason I sort of started our conversation off talking about this, the only real reason I wrote this book, which I also love the red cover, and red's my favorite color, is that if somebody else is given a grim diagnosis. And it doesn't have to be anything to do with their Achilles. It could be with their heart. It could be with diabetes. It could be anything, any grim diagnosis. You don't have to accept it. Because my grim diagnosis is basically, you're not going to walk. And I thought, no, you just watch me.
Yeah, no, it's really inspiring, and I'm excited to check out the book for sure, and we'll include the links to for the listeners to purchase the book themselves. And it comes out on February 10th, you said, right?
Yes, yeah, and there's going to be a nice big ad for it in the New York Times on February the 8th. I'm very excited about that.
Excellent.
What was the process of writing the book? How long did it take?
I actually started it as an essay. I'm although I've written 4 books, I'm mostly known as an essayist, and my essays have appeared lots and lots of places, and but it was too long. It was like 40 pages or something. So I contacted a local writer here, and I said, I need to work with some editor. This is too long for an essay. I need to work with someone to shave this down. And so she put me in touch with an editor in Seattle, Josh Moore. And Josh read those 40 pages, and he said, this isn't an essay. He said, this is a map for a book, and it's spectacular. And so I thought, well, okay, let me try that. And I turned it into a book, but I certainly didn't start out that way. I just wanted to tell the story. And so if anybody else gets a negative, grim diagnosis about something, they do not have to take it.
Well, I'm inspired listening to you.
Same.
And Nick and I don't have any major medical issues right now, but I will say Nick himself has some personal adversity that he needs to overcome, because we talked about this earlier in the episode when you weren't here, but Nick does not know how to ride a bike, and he has 2 young children, and he needs to learn how to ride a bicycle so he can teach them how to ride a bike. So I feel like this story should inspire him to at least understand that anything's possible.
Certainly.
Right.
Yeah. So I give Nick a hard time because it's sort of an ongoing joke that he can't ride the bicycle, so we're going to teach him how to do it. But no, in all seriousness, though, it is really inspiring. It's insane that you can walk without an Achilles. That's just. Did the doctors that you talked to, did they ever say anything about how many people are like you out there?
No.
I can't imagine there's more than a handful, right?
Well, I'll tell you one guy I spoke to. Yeah. I was reading the New York Times one day, and a letter to the editor in the New York Times was from this guy in Florida. He had been riding his bicycle. He used to ride his bicycle 50 miles a day. He was riding his bicycle, had an accident on the bicycle, and it ripped his Achilles. And then, just like in my case, an infection set in, the whole area became necrotic, and then he's got to deal with the traumatic wound and the Achilles, and his Achilles had ruptured, and then it had died too after the necrosis. And so he had 3 surgeries to deal with the necrosis and the whole. And then he stopped. And I said, why? You had 3 surgeries. I had 8 surgeries. I said, you had 3. Why? You're not walking again yet. And he was 73 years old, and he just threw in the towel. He said, I can't do anymore. I don't have the energy for it. I was really disappointed by that discussion.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. So, but it just highlights the fact that your perseverance and hard work really made it.
Okay, so can I tell you a story about oboes, my hiking boots?
Sure.
Yeah. So a year ago, the oboes people, who actually happened to be just coincidentally headquartered in Bozeman, they honored me as a local hero. And I said to Paige, the woman who sent me the really nice email, I said, why me? And I wasn't asking to be flattered. I was curious, really, why me? And she said, because of your determination and grit, and GRIT in all capital letters. And I think some people would have given up, like the guy in Florida that I spoke to. They at a certain point, how much energy and spirit do you have? But I wasn't going to let that define me or the rest of my life. But can I just tell you about one of my favorite hikes of all time?
Yes, sure. I want to hear.
Have you ever done helicopter hiking?
No, is that the same thing as helicopter skiing? So you get dropped into a specific area?
Yes.
Wow.
And my husband and I were in New Zealand. He had heard, he likes to fish. He likes to fish like the Yellowstone in Montana. And so we ended up in New Zealand so that he could go heli fishing. And people said, was that where they dropped the hook from the helicopter?
That's what I was imagining when you said it.
Yeah. No, that is not where they dropped the hook from the helicopter. But they dropped the fisherman in a very remote area. And then he can fish without the competition of other fishermen around. And I thought, well, if they're going to do that for him, couldn't they drop me somewhere remote where I could hike, where there's no predators in New Zealand? That's
what I was going to ask you. Is it's not like Australia? There's no snakes or crocodiles or anything you have to worry about.
And I have a snake aversion. I can't. I can't.
Yeah, everybody has that.
Well, there's no snakes, there's no bears, there's no predators. The only thing they had there that was bad when we were there is mosquitoes. So this was before COVID, and we're wearing these big masks just so that we won't get bitten. But and they found a guide for me, and just to be dropped in the middle of nowhere with a guide, and to hike your little heart out. We went and saw one waterfall first, and then we went back to Boundary Creek and hiked for another 4 hours before we got to the big waterfall. And it was one of the best hiking days of my life.
Wow. What's your favorite waterfall of all time?
My favorite waterfall?
Yeah. What's your favorite?
Well, probably there's a lot of competition for that. There's so many I love. There's one in Big Timber in Montana that's just great. And then there's Snoqualmie Falls. The first one I went to north of Seattle when I was just 5-6 years old. We even have a waterfall here near where I live in Southern California. Now, of course, it only has water in it when it rains. So it would be hard to choose one. Okay. I mean, when you're so in love like that, how can you just choose one?
True. I've seen many nice waterfalls here in the Northeast as well. But Jo, I appreciate you joining us. And again, the book is called You'll Never Walk Alone, and it's going to be available on February 10th. And like I said, we will put the details on how to purchase this in our show notes and on our social media. Is there any questions, Nick, you wanted to ask, or is there anything that we forgot to ask you, Jo?
Not really a question I was going to say, but just ahead of time, I was kind of looking up just your situation sort of with your Achilles, and it seems so specific to me that your Achilles died, and so even more amazing that you're able to walk on it, because it's not even, you can't even easily like look it up on the internet, because it's just not something that happens really. It only to me makes it and highlights a little bit more like how your perseverance kind of dragged you through that, because it's not even a medical thing. It seems like you can even look up easily. So people, and also a shout out to sort of your PT and your team And again, to yourself for just kind of getting through that and just having the ability to walk again seems, again, like to me, I'm thinking you don't have an Achilles tendon at all. Like, how can you even walk? It's amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Well, and but also the title of the book, You'll Never Walk Alone. I didn't do it by myself. I had eventually this whole team of people who worked together to help me, and friends. I mean, when you end up with 8 surgeries in the hospital that much, the importance of friends. You'll never walk alone. Of people who come and when you get out of the hospital, come like the neighbors who would come and bring food. And one neighbor I gave a copy of the book to a few days ago, early copy, and I'd forgotten that I had mentioned her in the book. And she had taken the book on a recent trip, and she said, I'm famous. I'm in your book. And what I had mentioned about her is that she had come when I'm still in recovery. I've got my leg elevated. It's on ice. I'm downstairs. My leg is on a big bunch of pillows elevated. And she sits next to me and we just hold hands there. And I commented in the book that I'd never held Noelle's hand before. But when you're, that marginalized, the having friends gather around, whether it's the Persian friends who brought us all this fabulous Persian food, or Noelle who just takes the time to sit there with me and hold my hand. It's you do not do this by yourself. And I got to tell you this story. I did the audiobook like a week ago. And the audio engineer, who unfortunately is going through a divorce himself, he said, because he's working so closely with the book and the material and everything, and as a man, he says, I got to meet Ed. That's my husband. Because Ed was so there for me every step, no pun intended, every step of the way. And You can't go through a journey like this by yourself. You need a whole community of people who care whether you recover or not.
Fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's a great story, and we appreciate you joining us, Jo. And
thank you, Jo.
It's been fun hearing the stories, and I like that you're continuing to get out there. And I'm now looking at flights to Montana because I want to go out and hike these areas that you're talking about.
Okay, well, you come to Montana. I'll go to New Hampshire.
That's it. I'll do a summer trip to Montana, and then you can come to New Hampshire and experience the foliage. So. But again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will stay in touch. And if you ever want to come on again and keep us updated, we'd love to have you back.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It was fun.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right, Nick. So that was inspiring. Jo is awesome, and it's very impressive that she's able to recover from such a crazy injury.
Oh, what a story. That was some pretty captivating stuff, to say the least.
Right,
so
right.
Definitely check her book out.
Yeah, total nightmare for me. Like I have Achilles tendonitis, and like having a full rupture would be a nightmare.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine it. Just the logistics of, again, I don't have a great understanding of like medicine and stuff like that, but it looks like it's pretty damn hard to walk without an Achilles tendon, let alone if it ruptures or something. So,
right, yeah. So, Nick, I wanted to do a little bit of a history on the early hotels and structures in the White Mountains. You hear some of these places come up quite a bit, but what do you think? You want to go get into it?
Yeah, let's get into it.
Let's dive into some White Mountains history, shall we?
Awesome. So, just to start off with, so essentially, like these are the AMC is interesting. So when you read like the old Appalachia journals, like camping was not a thing. Like they didn't really like do a lot of tenting to be honest. They would have like established camps, I think, but I think that like the real sort of camping and backpacking culture really didn't start for a number of years after the AMC started doing their expeditions and whatnot. So it was really more about like them staying at hotels and base camping from those hotels to different places. So one of the main, so there's like, I'll run down like 5 or 6 of these places and then talk a little bit about like the history as best I can. So the Glen House is like sort of the primary. So this is at the base of Mount Washington. I don't know the exact location of the original Glen House, whether it was closer to the Auto Road entrance or whether it was where we now look at Pinkham Notch, but it was somewhere in that area. And you can consider this probably the most important AMC base in the White Mountains during the late 19th century. So this is where a lot of the AMC field meetings, the organized excursions, the presidential range ascents originated from this area. Which I feel like it's more evenly distributed nowadays. Like you can get to the Prezzies a lot of different ways. This was the most common. And the Glen House is referenced across the early Appalachia journals for field meetings, summer gatherings, excursions, and even like once they started getting into snowshoe use. And often like the AMC officers and counselors would stay there. They would have like scientific and exploratory parties that would stay there, and it was a nice base camp for them to use. So I think the original Glen House dates back to 1852, where a farmhouse was converted to host early tourists. So the farmers were basically like, this is a way for us to make more money in the off season, so we can host these tourists that are coming in through carriage and by trains. So the Glen houses, like over the years, they became like larger and more extravagant, and fires ravaged the Glen House multiple years. So the 1852 house burned down in 1884. Then there was another fire in 1893, and then another in 1924, and then another in 1967. So this was a common fate. So almost all these places we're going to talk about burned down. So the site remains now, and as of now, there's the modern Glen House opened in 2018, and that's situated at the base of the Auto Road. So then that's now the Glen House Hotel, which I still haven't stayed at. I need to book a night there for sure, or maybe a weekend. But yeah, that's the history. So the Glen House is important. And the AMC basically relied on it for many of their like meetings and events. So,
one blip on the fire portion of it. So, have you ever seen like there's like an aqueduct path that you can like it might be sort of even a ski trail that runs along, I think 19 Mile Brook Trail. Yeah. But you can see like old evidence from sort of where they dammed it stuff. I don't know I can't imagine they still rely on that as a fire extinguishing system anymore.
I don't think so.
I think we're way beyond that, but there are kind of evidence. And also, if you go down Crawford Path, there's sections where you see sort of, I don't know if it's iron tubing or something, running down the side of the path. And there's also like a dam, I think, at one point that you can tell was man-made or maybe concrete. Mm-hmm. And that one led to I'm assuming the Crawford House. It must have at the time. But there's some artifacts from sort of the systems because they did burn down so much. I would imagine they use water from other places too, in springs and wells, but I have to assume a lot of those were because they could kind of suppress the fires if they needed to.
Right. And probably weren't that successful with it. Once a fire gets going, no. I mean,
it's like done.
It's not good.
And were they mostly because of like kerosene?
I would think so. Stuff, I mean, like, I can only imagine people walking around late at night, knocking over a lamp, or they're drunk, or candles. Like there's a million different things that probably caused it, but clearly that area there would be they would be subjected to fires a lot. So, but that whole area, Pinkham Notch down to the Auto Road, is just it's still a hugely important sort of jumping off area for the whites. But this was the main area for when you look at the early AMC. And then the other one was, you just talked about this, the Crawford House, which was located in Crawford Notch. This was originally owned by the Crawford family, and then later somebody by the name of Asia Barron and other hotel interest took it over, and the Crawford House represents the older White Mountain tourist tradition that the AMC plugged into. So sort of like they were there before the AMC really got big and the Glen House got big. This is like sort of the place to go. So now this would be where we would consider the Highland Center is in Crawford Notch. And this is mentioned quite a bit, like Willie and Webster trips are mentioned in the early Appalachia journals. Anything to do with jumping off from the Southern Presidentials or Willie Tom Field. This was typically the early AMC members would travel by train through the Notch and get off there, and you'd get a mix of hikers, tourists, and then there'd be local guides available. So committee members from the AMC would go for exploratory hikes from this area as well. And like I said, Webster Jackson, the Willie Range, Southern Presidentials, you could get to Mount Washington from here. The history on this one is it first opened in 1850, so a little bit before the Glen House. And the Crawford House grew into one of the largest hotels in the region. And again, it burned and was replaced multiple times, expanding alongside the railroad access. By the 1800s, it could host hundreds of guests and function as a full social resort. The hotel declined after World War II and closed in 1975. Ultimately, it burned in 1977, and now the site hosts the AMC Highland Center. And so this sort of represents continuity from the Grand Hotel to the modern hiking institution. So before, the Highland Center is pretty rustic at this point, but prior to that, you had bellhops and train schedules and a lot going on down there. So,
yeah, I know with those Grand Hotels too, so much was linked to kind of the decline of railroads and when automobiles started rising up because people weren't like forced to go into the whites, sort of those locations by railroad anymore. And then hotels and little motels started kind of popping up in inns everywhere. And I think people just stopped going to those Grand Hotels as much.
Right. Exactly. And then another one is just sort of like the next stop on the train from Crawford Notch is up into Bethlehem, north of Crawford Notch, which is the Fabian House. Owned by the Fabian family and associated with Sylvester March of the Mount Washington Cog Railway. So the Fabian House was the northern anchor for the AMC White Mountain travel. So this was a base for longer multi-week circuits and northern approaches if you wanted to go in. So the AMC Appalachians talk about this in a couple of their early volumes around northern White Mountain travel, extended longer excursions. You'd have senior AMC members and then people that wanted to approach the White Mountains from the north. So it was a staging point for these longer expeditions. And then it was also preferred, I guess it was a little bit more comfortable up there. So if you were a little more bougie, Nick, you would stay up at the Fabian House.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I actually never kind of knew the history of that. And when they say the northern approaches, is that like, so if they were going for like northern presidentials?
I think
like
so. Yeah. If you're going to go up on like the Castle Trail or,
yeah, I guess that's fair.
Caps Ridge or coming up on like, maybe you wanted to do a day trip up the Cog, it would be closer to that area there. So. Yeah.
It's funny in my head too. And I think that's just having driven up there so much, but I always think of Fabians and like Crawford as being like pretty close, but they're not. It's got to be like, I don't know, 10-ish miles or something.
Yeah, and maybe the thing I don't know, I need to do the research too, is like I don't know if the Fabian House that we're talking about that opened in 1873 is exactly located where we think of Fabian at this point. Probably close, but maybe a little bit closer up to Bethlehem than where it exists right now. But it opened in 1873 and was among the largest White Mountain hotels with up to 250 rooms. Although I do wonder, like maybe the Omni is where it sits now, but. I'll have to do some more research on that. I didn't pull that, but it had modern amenities like gas lighting and steam heat, and it functioned as a destination resort. It declined as automobile travel replaced rail tourism, and then burned in 1951, leaving only foundations and memories. So, so it had a pretty short life compared to the other ones. But the next one is the Profile House, which was located in Franconia Notch, so Profile House, Old Man of the Mountain, So this was situated under, I guess, Profile Mountain or Cannon Mountain, as we would call it now. But this was essentially the Franconia counterpart to the Glen House, central to AMC's exploration of the western White Mountains. And, a lot of references in Appalachia about Franconia excursions. The art committee had a lot of focus in this particular area. So any AMC members that wanted to hike Lafayette or Franconia Ridge, a lot of photographers and illustrators would stay at the Profile House as well. And, it was really a social and artistic hub. It was founded in 1853, and it expanded into a massive resort with cottages, bowling alleys, electric lighting, and a private railroad spur, and played a key role in shaping the visual mythology of the White Mountains. This hotel burned in 1923, and the area later transitioned to the state-managed recreation center around Cannon Mountain. So you can sort of see these hotels were like in the key notches where people would jump off to try to hike the big well-known mountains.
Yeah, it's interesting too, and I don't know if some of that's because of how like the Weeks Act and stuff and when it went through, but it's interesting to me that basically like the main jumping off points in the Whites are the same as they were like 150 plus years ago.
Right.
Like I think that's one of the most fascinating things about the Whites in general is that like you're trotting on the same paths that like just all these people have been doing for like generations now.
Right.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And then I guess a couple of other noteworthy ones. I won't get into as much detail on these. So there was the Mount Washington Summit House, which is including the Tip Top House. So a lot of times like the, whether they were coming in from the Glen House or they were coming from Crawford, they would end up staying overnight at the Summit House, and there was AMC meetings that would go on there. Scientists and observers would stay up there. Exploratory parties would also stay up there quite a bit. So it got a chance, and eventually it turned into meteorological work and observational work. And it was just a very important hub. Opened around the same time as the rest of them, 1852, and was later replaced by a large structure. It eventually burned in 1908, but where the Tip Top House survived as a historic site. But obviously now we know that the buildings up on the Mount Washington have expanded and modernized. So
was the Summit House kind of where like the cog comes up now? Like I've seen old pictures of it. It's kind of hard to tell where it would have been, or I don't know if it would have been more like where is it the Sherman Adams building?
Yeah, I think it was probably close to that, but I'm not exactly sure. So.
Also, a fact, I did not know that they blasted stone up there to make that. That's pretty incredible.
Right.
And sounds really dangerous.
Exactly. Yeah, so maybe the Mount Washington might have been actually taller than it was, but they blew up a bunch of rock up there.
Yeah, a bunch of Bostonians just going up, blowing up rock, making buildings.
Sorry, New Hampshire. And a couple of these other ones. So the Halfway House was an important lodge and base for people going up Mount Washington Carriage Road. So this was just a roadside shelter used by AMC parties during ascents to Mount Washington, and it was a good sort of bailout spot if you felt like the weather was going to be bad. Randolph Mountain Club cabins, we talked about those quite a bit on the show. And then Waterville House was another one that was at the head of the Mad River Valley. This was a valley hotel used by AMC members exploring like the Tri-Pyramids in the southern White Mountain regions. So this comes up quite a bit in the Appalachia Journals. And then you've got the Bethlehem Junction Lodging as well, which is I guess adjacent to the railroad tracks and was used by AMC members arriving late by train before they transferred to larger hotels. And then to add to this, there was a number of private farmhouses that were known, particularly around the Sandwich Range in the Wanalancet area, where people would just have relationships, and local homes and farmhouses would be used for overnight lodging by smaller AMC parties in these lesser touristed areas. So like the Sandwich Range got a lot of these sort of private farmhouse setups, or people would stay at the local preacher or Wanalancet club members' homes when they went up there. So it's pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm kind of always fascinated by the history of New Hampshire and the Whites and like all these structures. And to me, it's always funny with that argument about like development on Mount Washington. It's like, I think a lot of people don't realize that there was a Summit House up there with like multiple hotel rooms at one point even.
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah. So that is the history of some of the big ones. And I'll try to put some stuff in the show notes so people can check out the history on this stuff. But essentially what I would do, I just read through sort of the Appalachia journals and pick these off. And these are the ones that come up most frequently. There's definitely other ones that have creeped up over the years, but these are the big ones.
Yeah, very, very cool.
All right.
I always love when you play history, Mike.
It's all right. Thanks, Nick. I'm glad
appreciate
I
it.
could entertain you. So hopefully I entertain the listeners too. And then we'll be back at episode 222 to entertain you next week.
All right. Bye, everybody.
All right.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered in today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information at SLASRPodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until then, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some mega peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are?
Here's Lieutenant James Nealon, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.